Have you ever been sitting at a dinner table and having a conversation with your friends and family? And before you know it, the conversation that was pretty casual just turned sour. And at this moment, you realize that someone that you knew maybe for years hold beliefs that are so different than yours. And it gets to the point that you're just basically screaming at each other because your worldview is so different from one another that you cannot even hold a conversation anymore. How did we end up here? Why do simple conversation turns into those battlegrounds? Well, that doesn't just happen at your dinner table, because we can see it everywhere. We can see it in communities breaking up, in partnerships, in friendships, with family. It is all over the place. Weirdly enough, everybody starts having extremely strong opinions about specific topics that usually are also very emotional. For example, the COVID vaccine or abortion or veganism. And those beliefs become so strong that they act as dividers between us and they isolate each other. Today, we're diving into one of the force between all this chaos: echo chambers. Those are not just online glitches. They are environments that shape our beliefs, they polarize our perspectives, and they impact our closest relationships. So let's uncover what echo chambers really are, how they form, and how we can break free from them with practical tips. Echo chambers form when we surround ourselves with people or content that simply echo back our own views. Social media platforms like YouTube or TikTok are basically designed to try to get us hooked as long as possible, continuing consuming the content, which usually mean contents that we appreciate watching based on our interest and our past viewing history. It sounds great because you see something which is relevant, is personalized, but there is also the challenge of only seeing content that reflect our own perspectives. The more we engaged, the narrower our point of view becomes, and soon enough, it seems like everybody thinks the way you do. For example, on communities focused on vaccine skepticism, the user which has a fair interest in the beginning will just research a simple video. But then, once the algorithm sees that, it will bring other type of content, other videos to this user to try to keep him engaged. And before long, the only thing that this person sees is skepticism on vaccines. The platform selects the worst stories related to vaccines and show it to the user, as if all the vaccines were bad. The same can be said with the so-called manosphere. It could be that someone has a genuine interest in understanding more about gender in societies, but before long, all he sees is Andrew Tate's view on women. And I already mentioned this paper in another video, but I gotta do it again, because it's relevant. Cass Sunstein has written about group polarization, and he explains there that when people start debating or discussing a specific topic, rather than becoming more neutral because they have more facts about a specific topic, they will end up on more extreme position on the spectrum. So basically, when we start discussing online, it often happens that we take our beliefs and we turn them in more extreme versions of those beliefs. On top of that, once you realize that many people think the same way, you want to fit in. And so, since your reputation is on the line, you will be easily convinced to just follow the herd. Interestingly, internet allows us to find other perspectives, but only if we're willing to look for them. But what do you think? Do you think people are so open to other opinions? In very emotional topics such as politics or school shootings or COVID vaccines, rather than seeing this as potential new information and weighing the pros and the cons against our own beliefs, we will see those as attacks and we will become more and more on the defensive. As stated in the intro, those echo chambers, they don't just influence our beliefs, they also impact our relationships. When we are only exposed to a single perspective, we naturally drift away from people who see things differently. Over time, both sides end up in the extreme and communication is fully broken. Is that something that you have an experience with? Maybe a family member that you had a heated discussion with and that you just don't get along now? Or a friend, coworker? And it gets worse. When we're deep in an echo chamber, it's easy to forget that the people on the other side of the discussion, but potentially also of the screen, because much of these interactions are online, are actually real human beings. And what do? We call them or the others. And from there, it is a slippery slope into the destruction of the relationship. Now, I want to clarify what is meant by echo chambers, because it's really easy to misunderstand them. Often, we confuse echo chambers with epistemic bubbles. An epistemic bubble is an unintentional isolation. It is simply that you don't see content from the other side, and so your beliefs are biased to one perspective only. And it happens all the time. We talked about social media, but it could simply be your group of friends. Often our friends are homogeneous, they're working more or less in the same jobs, they come from the same place, maybe the same social status, and so their beliefs might also be quite homogeneous. So when you only have access to this information, your beliefs will be the same as the group. And of course, we also have a bias to try to confirm our own beliefs, which means we will only discuss topics with people that we know agree already on those topics. What is good about epistemic bubbles? They're extremely easy to pop. You simply have to seek alternative information. And now let's look at echo chambers. What's different with them? Well, echo chambers are intentional isolation, which makes them deliberate and damaging. In an echo chamber, it's not that you just don't look or find alternative information, but rather they are actively discredited. It's not just that you don't hear others' opinion. You learn to distrust anything which doesn't align with your belief. And this distrust is reinforced by the community you are in, the content you consume, and also sometimes the influential leaders that are the face of those movements that are trying to use those divides for their own benefits. So as we saw, it often starts harmlessly. You're just curious about a certain topic, you go online, you look for it, and the algorithm grabs your search and starts feeding you the same information. Before long, that is all you see. But it gets even worse, because there is another mechanism that takes this chaos, speed it up, and creates a monster out of it. And this mechanism is that content which is shocking or polarizing actually grabs attention much better than normal content. That means that even if in the beginning you were not so interested in the topic, now you are. I'm talking about everything connected with primal instinct. It could be death, it could be violence, it could be sex. Everything that naturally grabs our attention will be the first step bringing you closer to a potential echo chamber. Before you know it, your feed is full of the most shocking and disgusting content, which our primitive brain just loves. To give you an example, I ended up on my feed with videos of people going on top of the Everest with frozen fingers and people dying next to each other in a rope in the middle of the night, freezing to death. And I promise that is not what I want to watch. It's the same phenomenon than being on the highway and seeing an accident, and your reason knows that you shouldn't watch it, but you just have a desire, it's too strong, and you start watching it. And when you see potentially the victims, then you're disgusted that you just watched it. So how do we break out of those echo chambers? Well, the first step is to diversify your source of information. And who knows, maybe you're simply in an epistemic bubble and you will get away with it. If you're not, that's bad news, you're in an echo chamber. But now that you know a bit the telltale signs of an echo chamber, you can potentially realize that you're in one. For example, if there is a guru saying that you should hate some type of people or the others or them, then that's a very good sign that you should just go. And honestly, I think that covers so many of the topics that we're exposed with. It's this vaccine skepticism, discussion on abortion, religion, politics. Most of them have echo chambers waiting to get your attention. One other thing that you could do is check my previous videos where I showed that defining knowledge and understanding our beliefs is extremely challenging and that we should probably be more humble and less convinced about what we think. And I've promised some practical tools to help you out, so here they are. And I just started this channel. It is not sponsorships. I just look online for a few tools because hopefully they're helping you out. So you can check allsides.com, which will bring you news from the left, from the right and middle. A big one is Ground News, which shows which outlets cover different stories and shows if you have a bias for left-wing type of content or right-wing. To sum it up, echo chambers are comfortable, but they limit our growth and our understanding of the world. They make us feel validated, we're not alone, but it's at the cost of understanding, of empathy, and of relationships. Breaking out is extremely tough, but it's the only way to see the world more fully. In the next video, we will explore how fake news and echo chambers are not a modern phenomena. In fact, these concepts go back to ancient times, and even Socrates had something to say about them. We'll look at how Socrates debunked fake beliefs and try to bring us closer to understanding. See you on the next one.